Hello, and welcome back, Peering Soul. This is the second entry to my digital sketchbook series, which, if this is, by chance, your first time upon my channel, is simply a collection of drawings for one or more of my fantasy worlds that I am currently designing. I detail my ideas, design philosophy, and the stories which accompany the drawings, if it's applicable. Last entry was all about the revamp of Dungeon of the Wanton, specifically the first grotesquely rotten chapter explored. And like I said at the end of that video, this and the following entries will be about several other disconnected worlds. Here, I will be talking about two, with one being a revival of an old series I made when I was 9, and the other being a delve into a certain genre I pretty much never touch. But, as you have seen with the thumbnail and title, I appear to be only discussing about one. This Peering Soul will be detailed shortly. Okay, enough setup. Let's get on to this before I ramble for almost 10 minutes about stuff that isn't one of the sketchbook pages, huh? Let's begin with that one other world, which will not be discussed with the same order as any of my other worlds showcased in my sketchbook, instead being more of a talk about my feelings on this matter. I will not detail each drawing shown, as I more want to explain the history and the unfortunate fate of this project. Back when I was 9, I had created a sort of video game mock-up set in a high fantasy world, with the gameplay being a fusion between adventurous RPGs and Minecraft, due to it having a crafting system, procedural world generation, and straight-up pulled status effects from the game, such as weakness, hunger, slowness, etc. The focus of this project, which I later labeled OG RPG, were the many enemies you encountered in the equally varied biomes you would explore, such as a classic forest, caves, deserts, jungles, and even the ocean, with it also having its own unique areas, such as a microscopic world, an 8-bit world, a cloud kingdom veiled in shadow, and a dark, nightmarish underworld. I drew 102 enemies total, and along with each were their stats, simply showing their general defense and attack levels, coin and gemstone drop rates, as well as their abilities and weaknesses. I hold OG RPG close to my heart, for it being one of the few projects of mine which I didn't abandon halfway or even a quarter of the way through, especially at that age, where it was most common. Fast forward to spring of 2024, which is when I was beginning to get used to digital art, I had decided to revive old works of mine and rework them into my current style. And after some fiddling with one other world which swiftly fell flat, I set my sights on OG RPG. I thought that the more monster-centered style of OG RPG would be better for me, as opposed to the narrative and character-focused project I lost steam for, and so I delved deep into the revived OG RPG. But its results were unsatisfactory, and consistently remained so after continued months of work for it. There were times where it was satisfying, that it felt like I was on track to making something special out of an old love, but those feelings sank. It was an ebb and flow between my vision for OG RPG and the disappointing results of my efforts to make those visions tangible for the naked eye to see, including my own. Why was this a case, when OG RPG held such a firm grip in my heart? I thought again and again of what this reason could be, but I could not pull it from the sea. But here, in my digital sketchbook, this cause came to light. The enemies, which were integral to OGRPG's identity, had simply lost their focus. In other words, they just didn't fit the admittedly shambled excuse of a style that was for the revived OGRPG, which I just could not figure out no matter how many ideas I came up for it. There was no refinement, no access which all my ideas encircled, and so they were left to swirl in their chaos, which I foolishly passed off as a unified design. As I was sketching the monsters you've seen, there was no passion pulling out, only frustration and dissatisfaction with every drawing. That, as I've come to learn as I grow older, is a sign that the project I was so excited for was reaching its twilight. It's a painful thing, isn't it? To have something so dear to you fade away from the simple fact that it just is not working. And so, for your own heart's sake, it is best to let it go. To let it sink into the sea of your mind, away and far, but its grip still felt in passing. Perhaps you should have never been revived, for a story that's been told does not always need to be rewritten. That got a little deep in my feelings, eh? But it's true. I had so many ideas for the revived OGRPG, so many that it quickly lost all focus, which is central to keeping my worlds from teetering into shambled messes. It became too big for its own good, and I needed to let go before it totally burnt me out, which I thinkly began to do once I sketched all of the enemy concepts as shown on that page. But with all of the things I dreamt up for OGRPG, I knew that I couldn't just let it go to waste. And so, to keep this period's legacy alive, I will pluck my favorite concepts and place them into several other worlds which, with a bit of tweaking, will fit nicely into them, and will, hopefully, not expand into something far too big for me to handle. And as I was sketching the last of those enemies, one concept popped into my head out of nowhere. One that was generally foreign to me, but, as I thought of it more, utterly exciting. This peering soul is the world you've been glimpsing with this entry's thumbnail. A brutal world, a ruined world, a stained world, made by man's hand. Welcome, O peering soul, to the waste of stains of sin. With this new idea of a post-apocalyptic world almost formed by technology, I began with what unsightly forms humanity would take in this ravaged epoch. And so, this is what I first came up with, and is the basis on which Stains of Sin's version of humans would go by. These modern people, half mechanical and half biological, are called the neo-humans. And while they are gruesome looking and an utter bastardization of our natural bodies, they are best suited to survive the wastes of their destroyed world. While the forms neo-humans take currently are different to this first sketch, they still share much of what this design had, such as the circular implants, biological torso with mechanical limbs, an air tank fitted to their bodies, and an antenna on the side of their heads. This neo-human is one who, as you can see, has been broken, even more so than neo-humans naturally are, and is found lying against a wall as they are on the last sliver of breath in their tank. Blind, unable to move, and absent of resources. A lost cause to be abandoned by their fellows, and a waste of effort to any new humans who may want to help them. They will suffocate once it's empty and be taken by the stains of the red ruin. But such is the fate of those whose fortune has run out. Keep moving on, wanderer, as the world doesn't weep for the descendants of the ones who ruined it. Moving on to the second sketch of this new idea, I knew that once I really dived into this post-apocalyptic world, I would have to design lots of mechanical contraptions and entities, which is a field I'm not used to in the slightest. But not letting that deter me, I drew this spherical machine with a bunch of antennae sticking out of it, constantly emitting radio signals and, sort of magically, I guess, hovering in the air. This machine hovers through ruined cities, scanning for new humans with its bumpy eye. And once doing so, sends signals to a militaristic neo-human faction which comes to the drone's location. The crest of this faction, which at the time of sketching I didn't have a clear idea of, can be seen on the back, with the image being a rose with a sort of star hanging above it. When I was sketching the first two conceptions, I knew that to fit this world's style, all mechanical and technological designs had to be rough, scrappy, worn, and flawed, as that, to me, showed that it was made by man, and not by some perfect, hyper-advanced civilization. And so, excessive wiring exposed to the elements, asymmetrical engineering, damaged metal, and a stylized fusion between Cold War era technology and dark sci-fi is what shall define most of Stains of Sin's vision of the artificial. A concept which arose from the first new human sketch was that, because the very air was toxic in this world, new humans need to breathe an oxygen substitute via a tank attached somewhere to their bodies. These breath tanks come in varying shapes, sizes, and levels of quality, with the left one-star tank being just scraps put together that can barely hold reasonable air, and the right three-star tank being of a much finer material, though rarer. The tank, instead of being held outside the body, like so with the first sketch, would be kept mostly inside the body. It would either be in the mouth or in the gut. The tube would connect to the lung and be safe from external dangers. The rare three-star tank would be in the mouth, and the front disc depicts a rather uncanny smile, to imitate what man once had before it all went to ruin. To explore the harrows of this brutal world, I sketched here a neo-human who has met a gruesome fate. Caught in a black rainstorm, their body mostly melted from the intense acidity, left barely alive as a crawling, rain-soaked wretch. The rain melted through their skull, creating a cavity stained by black, which makes them recklessly violent to other beings. It is one of the many fates worse than death a new human can face, and they will only become worse as the world develops. Additionally, this kind of melted new human can be found in the Rain District, which will be discussed in greater detail sometime in the future. Shifting to a scene drawing, which I honestly don't do that often, but I really want to, as having just the monsters and other miscellaneous things be drawn just does not paint the full picture, you know? This scene depicts three unfortunate neo-humans who have been impaled upon on some black pikes within the Broken Border City, located south in the world map, which I won't create for a while. That's for sure. The fractured, craggy urban environment with ruined metal, large machinery, and tubing scattered throughout would become a staple for the city-type locations going forward. And as will be shown once Stains of Sin gets into a comfortable place where I can make their own videos for, the echoes of hubris and war become ever clearer. What exactly caused the neo-humans to become impaled, peering soul, will be revealed again another time. Get used to me saying that. Another autonomous machine. This is a smallish robot affixed with a tall antenna that is designed to emit signal-inhibiting radio waves in its vicinity, affecting the minds of neo-humans who get close. It would move around fairly slowly, following around violent neo-human bands who created the robots and are immune to the signal via the black plug seen to the right of the antenna. These robots are a luxury to the brigands who possess them, ensuring their survival in an unceasingly cruel world. While most neo-humans are half mechanical and half biological, I thought, why would there not be some that sought to make themselves one completely with technology? This sketch is of that, a mostly mechanical neo-human that has reduced themselves to a head connected to a small but powerful electric generator. It uses this energy to power its electricity beams, which it would fire out of its visor-like eye with maniacal glee. These more machine-than-flesh neo-humans are called warlocks, who will be expanded upon in their own dedicated entries. Ending the first page of Stains of Sin, here is my first concept of what are referred to as saints, or neo-humans who have elevated themselves into deity-like figures through technology. But they are not gods, only seen so from the desperations of those whose faiths were lost to the devastation and turned to make their own in the terrifying New Age. The saint depicted is the Saint of Forgiveness, who has engineered themselves into cleansing those who are becoming stained. The brain is the vessel of the stains of sin, and so neo-humans, teetering on the edge of corruption, seek the saint to rid themselves of it, though most never make the journey. The neo-human at the saint's base is one who has dedicated themselves to being optimal for violence. But due to this, they are so easily stained, and so frequent the saint to be forgiven the bloodlust they partake. So far, I only have 2 saints concepted, and their designs may very well change at some point, but the core idea will remain. I think, at least. We'll see. Let us begin with the first sketch for the second page of Stains of Sin, and with a rather lengthy, detailed one at that. Here is the anatomy of a generic neo-human, featuring the standard parts which define the modern machine-crafted man. The head and torso are the most biological parts of them left, though still dotted with machinery necessary to keep the technology housed within them functioning. Limbs are entirely mechanical, for in this world you must be willing to destroy your own limbs to save yourself, and they are, by design, replaceable. The exact model of limb is inconsistent, with every neo-human having their own quirks which make them unique in a way. Breath tanks are a necessity, and as stated previously, are either held somewhere in the gut or in the mouth. With this neo-human, being of the gut tank variety. The place where the tank is inserted is the obvious spiraling hole. Peeking at the internal anatomy, it is mostly metal, wires, and synthetic veins branching out in every direction, with really the only organ remaining being the lung, always situated on the right side. Neo-humans have lost the other lung due to the conditions required to breathe in the oxygen substitute found after the world was wasted, shrinking and blackening after generations of exposure. Where the heart was is the blood core, which stores and pumps out mock blood through the aforementioned synthetic veins to keep the lung, torso, and brain alive, since they are all that remains of their natural forms. Usually found around the abdomen is the veil box, a rather innovative piece of technology which generates a thin coat of E-game 0 around the neo-human, acting as additional protection against attacks and the elements. This coat is fully translucent as well, and capable of being seen by most visions. But to power the veil box, an energy plug needs to be inserted, the circular head dotting the neo-human's body as seen. The more plugs a neo-human has, the stronger their E-game 0 coating is. Since biological eyes would wither from exposure to the air, artificial ones have taken their place, offering the same sort of vision ancestral man possessed, while also, like limbs, designed to be replaceable and modifiable. On either where the left ear was, or behind the skull, is an antenna, which connects directly to the brain and allows for psychic hearing and communication with neo-humans, machines, and other radio-based technology. Probably the most important part of any neo-human is the brain, which has remained mostly unchanged throughout the generations of mechanical torments man had to endure to get where they are now. Highly sensitive, it is what allows the rest of the body to function. Any damage done to it is irreversible and often fatal. The top of the skull, as shown, can be opened, allowing repair of the brain's non-biological components, which allow for the use of the antenna, eyes, and limbs. Ending with two profile shots of a new human head, each the two models which any new human can have once they are manufactured. The left is one who has the mouth tank model, which, as you can see, rests safely in the mouth, and whose tube, which is always longer than the gut model, reaches down to the top socket of the lung. The right is of one who does not possess a mouth model, but despite this, their mouths, and by extension noses, are plugged. This is to keep them from breathing toxic air, and additionally, since all new humans have lost pretty much all function for their mouths, they lack vocal cords, and so the antenna acts as a substitute. It isn't pretty, and is of constant discomfort to the new human, but it keeps them alive, which is all that matters now. The oxygen substitute which I have mentioned are the so-called safe breaths, found in 3 varieties with their respective rarities. This breath originates from deep in the earth, recently rising to the grand caverns and surface after the world became the Red Ruin. However, despite it being used in place of oxygen, it is mildly toxic, and is what led to the shrinking and blackening of the single lung neo-humans possess over the years. The lung is inferior to its natural predecessor, but it is ultimately fitted for the respiration of these breaths, and nothing more. The 3 varieties are as follows. Green, the most common but cheapest there is, found throughout the world and having the highest burnout of the 3. White, rarer but of higher quality, lasting a new human for much longer with less than what green breath would offer. And blue, the rarest breath to be found, located only in the tiniest pockets on the surface and nestled in the deepest recesses of the world's caves. It has the lowest burnout as well, with just a little bit of blue breath capable of lasting a new human for hours. White and blue, because of their rarity, are also of a higher toxicity, which can affect metal if exposed to for long enough, and so higher quality breath tanks are needed to contain good amounts of it. Below are the kinds of vents which breaths come from on the surface, with green having 4, white 2, and blue just 1, which is special since it's contained within a geode, requiring the rock to be split to get to the precious breath inside. On the bottom right is a little scene of a neo-human refilling their tank while fending off a group of vent locusts, which search for vents to consume the minerals, their ravenous feeding, destroying, and sealing the crack which the breaths come from. And so, these pests are killed on sight, for the benefit of all new humans needing the sought gas. Lastly, these are some capsule sketches for breaths, with the left made for green, the middle white, and the right blue. I imagine them being used kind of like an inhaler, inserted into the open tank cap to quickly refill their breath. A quick one. This sketch being of a pair of synthetic eyes modeled after ancestral human eyes, the pupil being what the new human would see out of, and the rest purely decoration. Like with the breath tank, whose cap is modeled after an ancestral smile, it is meant to imitate what man lost, robbed from them by their own hands long ago. I imagine there would be a full ancestral human model of body parts out there, somewhere. Its design intended to invoke friendliness and kinship, though its uncanniness prevents such feelings. Not that neo-humans would know what they once looked like. They have largely forgotten their ancestral forms. Yet another quick one. Here is a sketch of a neo-human and 3 repeating pattern symbols, which would quickly become one of the staple designs for Stains of Sin. I wanted to experiment further with neo-human anatomy, leaning into the asymmetrical engineering I mentioned previously, as well as the gruesomeness, you can call it, of their half-metal, half-flesh bodies. The repeating pattern symbols will be used to signify artificial creations, appearing on certain machines, the bodies of fleshcraft, and especially on objects and new humans becoming stained. Diving a little bit into some potential robots, this is a concept for a type of machine distinct from the scrap, war, and industry models, that being an old world model. Humanity of the past designed robots after their image, giving them rather uncanny human features that was purely for decoration, so as to invoke feelings of amity, you could call it. Even the ones made for security, such as the one sketched, would have them. This particular robot would be found patrolling a supermall of sorts that has retained much of the styles of the old world, thanks to the entrances being sealed by rubble. As you can expect, this machine model will have some really juicy designs later on, and I think they will be among the freakiest of entities in the Red Ruin. You'll see. And here is a lineup of 5 groups of denizens of the Red Ruin. However, I would later add a 6th, but that will come another time. From left to right, New Humans, the current form of mankind post-falling. A mixture of flesh and metal, they are unsightly and wretched empirically, yet they manage to survive the hell of their time. Capable of freely modifying their bodies, each are unique and have found their own ways of maintaining their fleeting lives. Machines, creations of pure technology, their mechanical forms and functions are highly diverse, each made with a specific task and are immune to many of the perils biological life faces. Blind to the world's state, they continue to perform their design's purpose tirelessly, and many will not hesitate to neutralize perceived threats. Ruins creatures, organisms of the old world which have managed to survive the folly, adapting to the Red Ruin without the use of technology and even thriving in certain locations. Unfortunately for neo-humans, the vast majority of Ruins creatures either see them as prey or as threats. Fleshcraft, artificial life forms marked by the red rosin, often found in abandoned labs and facilities buried under the earth. They are the legacy of the Hubris, which left the world in its current state, and all are a hazard to biological life. And lastly, the Stained, new humans which have been fully consumed by one of the stains of sin, transforming them into horrific monstrosities incapable of reason and driven purely by dark desires. They are one of the deadliest forces a neo-human can encounter in their wanderings. To capture the vulnerability of neo-humans in this brutal world they inhabit, I sketched this little scene of an unlucky neo-human who stepped in some sticky gunk, and as they try to pull their foot out of it, they feel wet droplets fall on their head. Looking up, their eyes are met with fleshy, layered tubes lined with sharp barbs, drooling this liquid onto them. They then recognize it being the maw of a Ruins creature, and before they could raise their firearm to protect themselves, the creature devours them whole. Not only is this drawing to highlight the cruelty and ease of death neo-humans face, but also to experiment with the style of Ruins creatures, which I want to look alien, dangerous, but also sort of malformed. Like these are animals that should have never come to be, but have from the influence of man's past sins. Returning to some more machines, this here is a curious rotund humanoid model that constantly emits smoke from its back and slightly rattles from within. These machines, when moving, appear like humans running. Well, a stiff imitation anyway. They are rather excitable, you could say, when spotting a new human. They run over to them with their arms reaching towards them, as if inviting a hug. If the neo-human welcomes it, they will be granted a most warm embrace. This peering soul is a fool's mistake. These are war-type machines, designed as moving bombs programmed to run towards sighted humans and explode when within touching range. The blast, incredibly powerful for its size, as well is capable of sending out shrapnel to maximize damage. The bomb kept within their rotund bodies, additionally, is in the same vein as this world's weapons of mass destruction. Going back to some neo-human anatomy, since the blood core cannot create mock blood, it occasionally needs to be refilled, and that's where this, the soft needle, comes in. They're not the most common, but are essential to survival, as their ease of use and storing make them a necessity to any new human who wishes to wander the Red Ruin. These syringes used to be distributed across the waste not long after the world fell, but such transport has ceased, and so they are found scattered throughout the ruined cities. Sob needles are not injected into the skin. Instead, they have a dedicated port located on the chest as a metal knob, shown in the sketch. Carefully inserted in, connecting to the little hole on the blood core, the precious synthetic ichor is then squirted in, keeping the neo-human going for just a little longer. Usually, one doesn't need to worry about the needle breaking during this process. But if it does happen, well, they're in trouble. The use of sob needles requires the use of at least one arm. But what if one lacks any for one reason or another? That is what I drew here. A poor neo-human who was born with a mutation which does not allow for limbs to be implanted, in their case, both of their arms. These kinds of neo-humans are often discarded from creation, or, if they make it, neglected, and given only the most primitive of equipment. This neo-human could have legs implanted, but, in a cruel joke, cannot use them, as they are incredibly weak and would not support their weight. These legs, additionally, were made for adolescent neo-humans, but they have retained it to adulthood. They are given breath periodically and are hooked up to a large container of mock blood, ensuring their survival, but left to sit and stagnate. They are now on the dregs of their ichor, and none are left to refill it. They will rot away, which has begun as a stain on their skull, alone. Their life has already been forgotten, as liabilities in the Red Ruin have no place in the minds of those who wander its wastes. I was thinking that, after they were abandoned by their fellows, a machine was left to be their caretaker. But tragically, they have been destroyed, rusting away like that neo-human will once they lose the last drop of blood from their container. I like the top sketch more, as it fits the human model machine, though I think I'll change it up a bit to make it, well, have more human features. The bottom sketch is just, it's too cartoony for me. I don't know. And now, let us end this dive into stains of sin with an organism crafted by humanity's hand. A flesh craft, the beginning of man's hubris, the catalyst from which lofty ambitions would arise and lead to the fall of the world. The art of artificial life began long ago in the Old World, practiced by the nation of Rosen, who became intoxicated by the highs of playing God. The fleshcraft encountered in the present day were not made directly by Rosen, but were crafted after the folly by different factions who, like Rosen, were infatuated with the art of unnatural life. Each are marked by the red, their blood flowing with the red, their very existence an echo of the red. The repeating pattern symbol comes back, as fleshcraft are artificial after all, and so their bodies are covered in these elaborate sigils which resemble fingerprints. That was a design I only noticed until later, but it's one I love and perfectly fits the man-made themes of the red. And coincidentally, this fleshcraft looks like a weird thumb. The two bulbs, which the repeating patterns encircle, are meant to be like umbilical hernias, to further enforce that it is an unnaturally born being. The fleshcraft will for sure have the strangest and possibly some of the grossest designs of the denizens of the Red Ruin. So, look forward to that and more for this world. And that wraps it up for this entry's peek into Stains of Sin. This world is a first for me, as I primarily do medieval fantasy worlds as opposed to sort of the futuristic post-apocalyptic ones. And strangely, designing all this stuff came pretty naturally, even though, as I said, I never do worlds in this style. It's brutal, it's hellish, it's man-made. It's just totally different and stands out among my other projects, which I kinda needed. There's loads more to come for Stains of Sin, with the next entry, in fact, being a little more about this world. And I hope you look forward to whatever artificial horrors rear their heads as Stains of Sin develops further. Alright, I will be seeing you, Peering Soul, another time.